Hello, my friend. Welcome back. Today, we are going to talk about something very real, something very human, something that almost every English learner experiences at some point. You understand English. You listen to videos. You follow conversations. You know the words. But when it's time to speak, your mind goes quiet. Your voice feels blocked. Your words disappear. You freeze. And when this happens, you may think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I speak? Why does my English vanish when I need it most? Today, I want to tell you something important. Nothing is wrong with you. What you are experiencing is not a lack of English. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is not a lack of effort. It is a very natural response of the human brain. So let's slow down. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw relax. Good. Freezing happens when the brain feels pressure. Not danger, just pressure. Pressure to be correct. Pressure to be fast, pressure to sound good, pressure to not make mistakes. Your brain hears that pressure and says, wait, stop, be careful. And in that moment, the part of your brain responsible for fluent speech becomes quiet. This is not failure, this is protection. Your brain is trying to protect you from embarrassment. Now let's talk about what freezing really is. Freezing is not silence. Freezing is over-control. You were thinking too much, monitoring too much, checking too much. You are watching yourself speak instead of speaking. And language does not like to be watched. Language likes flow. Language likes movement. Language likes permission. When you freeze, it is often because you don't feel permission to speak imperfectly. Now let's talk about something important. When children learn language, they never freeze. They say wrong words, they mix grammar, they pronounce badly, but they keep talking. Why? Because they are not evaluating themselves. Freezing appears later when judgment enters the system. Now let's bring this back to English. You don't freeze because you don't know English. You freeze because you care. You want to do well. You want to be understood. You want to sound intelligent. That intention is good, but it creates tension, and tension blocks speech. Now let's talk about the body. Freezing is not only mental, it is physical. When you feel pressure, breathing becomes shallow. The jaw tightens, the tongue becomes stiff, the voice goes quiet. Speech needs space. When the body tightens, speech has nowhere to go. So the first key to unblocking your voice is not more vocabulary, it is relaxation. Now let's slow everything down again. Take a breath through your nose, slowly out through your mouth. Good. Now notice something. You are speaking English right now, inside your mind. Your English is there. It did not disappear. It is just waiting for a safe moment. Now let's talk about safety. Your brain speaks freely only when it feels safe. Safe means no judgment, no urgency, no performance. This is why many learners speak better alone than in front of others. It's not confidence. It's safety. So the goal is not to force confidence. The goal is to create safety. Now let's talk about a powerful idea. You don't need to speak well to start speaking. You need to start speaking to feel safe. Safety comes after speaking, not before. This is very important. Many learners wait for confidence to appear, but confidence is a result, not a requirement. Now let's talk about internal dialogue. When you freeze, what do you say inside your head? Often it sounds like, don't say it wrong, think first, be careful. That voice feels helpful, but it slows everything down. Now try a different internal message. I can speak simply. I can say something small. I don't need a perfect sentence. Small permission unblocks speech. Now let's talk about sentence size. Freezing often happens when learners try to say too much at once. A full idea, a long explanation, a perfect answer. That's heavy. Instead, start with something small. One phrase, one reaction, one short sentence. For example, I think so. I'm not sure. That makes sense. Let me think. These phrases open the door. Once the door is open, more words can follow. Now let's talk about rhythm again. Conversation is rhythm, not grammar. You don't need a full answer immediately. A short response keeps rhythm alive. Rhythm reduces pressure. Pressure causes freezing. Now let's talk about translation. Many learners freeze because they translate before speaking. Translation is slow. Speech is fast. When you try to translate perfectly, your brain cannot keep up. Instead, let English come out incomplete. Incomplete English is better than silent English. Incomplete English invites response. Silence creates distance. Now let's talk about mistakes. Mistakes do not cause freezing. Fear of mistakes causes freezing. Native speakers expect mistakes. They are not surprised by them. They are surprised by silence. Now let's talk about listening again. The more you listen to real English, the more patterns your brain stores. When patterns are ready, speech becomes automatic. Automatic speech does not freeze. That's why shadowing is powerful. Shadowing bypasses overthinking. You don't decide what to say. You let sound move through you. This retrains your nervous system. Now let's talk about progress. Unblocking your voice is not a big moment. It happens quietly. One day you respond faster. One day you hesitate less. One day you speak without planning. You may not even notice it at first, but it is happening. Now let's slow down again. Take a breath. Notice how calm your mind feels right now. This calm state is where speech lives. You don't need excitement. You don't need motivation. You need permission. Now let's anchor this deeply. Say silently, I am allowed to speak imperfect English. I am allowed to pause. I am allowed to be simple. Again, I am allowed to speak. Good. Now let's imagine a future moment. Someone asks you a question in English. You don't rush. You don't panic. You say something small. The conversation continues. You are not frozen. That is not magic. That is safety. And safety can be trained. Now, let's close gently. Freezing is not your enemy. It is a signal that you care, a signal that you want to do well. You don't need to fight it. You need to soften around it. Speak a little, breathe, let English move. Your voice is not blocked forever. It is simply waiting for permission. We're going to go deeper into what happens after you begin to unblock your voice, because unblocking is not just about speaking, it's about learning how to stay open once you start. Let's slow down again. Take a breath, feel the ground under you, let your body settle. Good. Now let's begin. When your voice starts to unblock, you may notice something interesting. You don't suddenly speak perfectly. You don't suddenly speak a lot. Instead, you speak a little, but more often. And this is exactly what should happen. Fluency does not appear as a big jump. It appears as continuity. Small responses, short phrases, natural reactions. This is how speech stabilizes. Now let's talk about what often happens next. Many learners experience this pattern. They speak, it goes okay, then they think about it. They replay the sentence, they notice mistakes, they judge themselves, and slowly the pressure returns. This is very common. So today, we need to talk about after-speaking behavior, because what you do after you speak affects whether your voice stays open or closes again. Now listen carefully. Every time you speak English, your brain asks a question. Was this safe? If the answer is yes, your brain allows speech again. If the answer is no, your brain becomes cautious. Safety is not about correctness, it's about emotional experience. If you speak and then criticize yourself, your brain hears danger. If you speak and then let it go, your brain hears safety. So the key is this: do not review your English immediately after speaking. Let the moment pass. This is very important. Now let's slow this down. Imagine you speak a sentence. It's not perfect. Instead of thinking, "that was wrong," try thinking, "I communicated." That single shift keeps the channel open. Now let's talk about response patterns. Many learners freeze because they think they need to respond with a full answer. But conversation does not work that way. Conversation works in layers. First layer, acknowledgement. Second layer, reaction. Third layer, expansion. Freezing happens when learners try to jump directly to expansion. So today, let's normalize something. It is okay to respond in layers. For example, someone speaks. You say, "Yeah," or "I see," or "right." That is speaking. That counts. Then you add one more piece. "That makes sense." "I agree." "I'm not sure." This is already a response. Now, if you want, you can expand, but expansion is optional. Now let's talk about speed. Many learners think speed equals fluency, but speed without stability creates anxiety. Fluency grows when speed increases naturally. Natural speed comes from familiarity. Familiarity comes from repetition. Repetition requires low pressure. So again, simple responses are not a step backward, they are the path forward. Now let's talk about your inner listener. When you speak English, part of you is listening to yourself. That inner listener can be supportive or critical. If it's critical, your voice tightens. If it's supportive, your voice stays free. So today, I want you to imagine your inner listener as a calm presence, not a teacher, not a judge, just someone listening with interest. This mental image changes how you speak. Now let's talk about silence. Silence is not failure. Silence is part of conversation. Native speakers pause too. They hesitate too. They search for words too. But learners often panic during silence. They think silence means, "I failed." But silence often means, "I'm thinking." If you allow silence without panic, your brain stays open. If you panic, your brain shuts down. So next time there is silence, stay calm. Breathe. Silence will not hurt you. Now let's talk about breathing again. Speech follows breath. When you hold your breath, speech stops. When you breathe naturally, speech flows. Many learners unconsciously hold their breath when speaking English. So today, practice speaking on the exhale. Slow breath out, then speak. This physical habit alone can reduce freezing dramatically. Now let's talk about identity again. When you speak English, you may feel like a smaller version of yourself, less expressive, less confident. This is normal. Language carries identity. But over time, as your voice unblocks, your personality returns. Not all at once, gradually. Simple English allows this process. Complex performance delays it. Now let's talk about social energy. Speaking is social. Freezing often happens in high-energy situations. More people, more attention, more pressure. In these situations, use smaller responses. You don't need to speak more, you need to speak enough. Enough keeps you present. Now let's talk about preparation. Many learners try to prepare sentences in advance. Preparation feels safe, but it can increase pressure, because reality rarely follows the script. Instead, prepare reaction phrases, phrases that work in many situations. For example, "That's interesting. I didn't think about that. Let me think. I see what you mean." These phrases are flexible. They buy time without freezing. Now let's talk about the fear of sounding stupid. This fear is deep, but listen carefully. Native speakers do not judge intelligence by grammar. They judge intelligence by how you listen, how you respond, how you engage. Simple English can show all three. Now let's slow down again. Take a breath. Feel how calm this space is. This calmness is what your brain needs to allow speech. You can recreate this calmness in real life by breathing, by allowing imperfection, by starting small. Now let's imagine a future scenario again. You are in a conversation. You feel a pause. Instead of freezing, you say something small. The conversation continues. That moment builds trust in yourself. Trust builds confidence. Confidence builds fluency. Now let's anchor this deeply. Say silently, "I don't need perfect English to stay in the conversation. I can speak a little and continue. My voice can stay open." Again, my voice can stay open. Good. Now let's close gently. Unblocking your voice is not about courage, it's about kindness toward yourself. When you stop pressuring your English begins to move, and once it moves, it wants to keep moving. Thank you for staying with me today. Tomorrow, we can explore how to respond faster without rushing and how to build automatic speaking habits. Until then, be gentle with your voice. I'll see you in the next session, inside the Shadowing English Room.